which feels so awkward.
It's your girlfriend over there.
This is my fake girlfriend.
All I want is some short. All I want is like 10. You don't need to think too much. We don't need to have a real conversation. I just want like 10 like little clips of like 30 seconds.
It's the irony of what all this is, anyways. It's like you fucking talk for an hour. It's actually true. Have you decided what you're gonna do with the show?
I'm pushing it out. I'm basically, rather than having, I obviously have the long form audio, but it's basically I'm creating an old channel of like 15 clips, short bits.
I think that's great.
Just like short form, 30, 60 seconds.
So it's more about the short, anyways.
It's less about having the, thank you.
Thanks, Cordy.
You're amazing.
Appreciate you.
It's less about having the clip, which is like a teaser to direct.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about
That's
having.
being here. I'm kidding.
So cute. Got that on shot. That's
That was
great.
for the mic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's so quiet in here.
It's so quiet.
So it's mainly on the short clips.
Yeah, mainly short clips, which yes, people can go see the full, but it's mainly, right now I have a collection of like 15 people who to me are really inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And I do actually have some frames to give you some context.
Okay.
And I think this will be helpful to talk about because last time I had you on here, you were dying. So that's really cool. And there were some really profound moments in that. So let's touch on that a little bit and get a bit, kind of repeat on that. Of kind of having everything you wanted and like none of it matters because you're dead inside. But then the other piece that I'd really love to get your take on is in the last like month, I've had a spiritual experience with AI.
Okay.
And I was so resistant to it at first. And I think looking at the current shit now and looking at what's going on.
So much has changed. Actually, it's crazy. Like 1 year. It's actually very helpful to have the 1 year mark. It's almost exactly a year.
Yeah.
Since we met.
Yeah. So last time we met a year ago.
Yeah.
You had got you just got the diagnosis.
I hadn't got it yet. I was about to get the diagnosis an hour later.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And what was the diagnosis?
So last time we were together, I was about to go to the hospital actually, and I don't know why I wanted to do the recording. I was just like, let me get into it. I have the shoot. It should be interesting. I was struggling to like absorb water. I was like super dehydrated. I was shaking all the time. And I had basically been misdiagnosed for like 2 months with many different ailments. And I had eaten a meal. Basically, the long story short is I ate a meal coming back from a trip and I passed out on my counter for like 20 hours and was asleep. And then I kept eating and falling asleep for like 12 plus hours. And I couldn't wake up. I couldn't move really. And then I started bloating and then all these things were happening. And some doctors were like, oh, we have a parasite. Some were, hey, you have likely this type of an infection, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did a bunch of testing and the testing took a while, actually, surprisingly. In hindsight, I should have just been in a GI, like ICU, basically, equivalent, where they just did like rapid stool tests for a handful of things. But right after we recorded our show, I got a text from my doctor who said, there's a huge relief here. Like, I think your intuition's right. You've basically tested positive for something called C. diff. I think it's Clostridius difficile. It's just like a rare bacteria that basically colonizes your colon. And then at the same time, I had like a very late stage of colitis. And then I had a mid to late stage of like intestinal permeability, which is like leaky gut, which is kind of a catch. Like, it's a very, the gut world is very broad in like the diagnoses, But it was terrifying. And that was the beginning of a very terrifying recovery journey. But every moment before then was terrifying because I didn't know what was happening. And I wasn't sure. I was getting all these negative tests and I wasn't sure what wasn't me, if that makes sense. So I was like, if you keep testing negative for things, but you keep feeling worse, you start to question, is this me? Is this my psyche? Am I creating something? And then it was quite an intense recovery and treatment from there.
Yeah, because I mean, you on the surface, like your business is going really well. Seem to have your 31.
I was about to turn 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
30 now. On the surface, like everything was put together, and then you were sharing how, all you wanted was peace. You had this long journey of building businesses, and you were a hustler from kind of quite a young age, and had what ticked all the boxes of life of what you're supposed to have to be happy, but none of it mattered because you won 20 hours passed out.
Yeah, it was bad. So it was awful. It was awful.
Wow.
Yeah. The recovery was also, even to this day, which has been almost exactly a year since the diagnosis, I still have lingering effects from it, from the disease. The just gut takes so long to recover, especially at such a late stage. And yeah, almost creeping into like sepsis, kind of neuroinflammatory region where like there was almost a couple steps that happened that I went too far for like to recover fully.
What's your biggest takeaways from that experience?
I think the trite ones are very obvious. Like once health is gone, health is the only thing that matters. And you can't experience the rest of life. I have a ton of empathy for so many people that are in the autoimmune, community, or just suffering chronically from anything, because you have to create a new normal for yourself that is not fully you, and then you have to create some discernment between what is actually you, your new normal, and then what is actually the disease's effect on you. Not just on your physiology that affects your biology, but also what you then psychologically amplify, meaning mine was so much of my gut. And so the gut quite literally affects your psychology. So my physiology was triggering my psychology, and then you have to try to find discernment between that. And
that explains things.
It's really hard. I just have a ton of empathy for so many different classes of people that are in different autoimmune groups, even diabetics. I became like pre-diabetic basically, or reactive hypoglycemic for a little bit. It's terrifying. I had like a list. I had maybe like 20 different sub-diagnoses at some point.
I mean, thank you for sharing. I'm glad you're alive.
I'm glad I'm alive too.
I'm glad we have the last shot of you with your hair and the washed out.
Yes. I look crazy. For everyone else that didn't see it, I looked wild.
We have the shots.
Yeah.
There'll be a before and after.
Like, I just want peace. Low-key, I'm dying. I'm like rationalizing dying. Yeah.
Well, I think what was beautiful about it is, one of the things is, I think one of the reasons we connected maybe a couple of years ago now was your connection to something bigger. I think that the people that I really gravitate towards these days are the ones who have one foot in both worlds, which is, yes, know how to build businesses and operate in the real and the tangible side of life, which you do really well. I mean, the business is blowing up, but also have one foot in the world of something beyond the rational mind that we can't really see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what was really beautiful to witness was at the age of 30, also Saturn return, you're totally in the depth of it.
People told me, they're like, 29 is gonna be a hard year for you. I was like, thank you. They were right. They were for sure.
I mean, everyone says that. Everyone goes through some like shit at 29.
Yeah. That's the last thing you also want to hear, by the way, too. You're like colon's getting wiped out. You're getting a fecal transplant. Someone's like, it's your Saturn return. And you're like, shut up. That doesn't help me right now. I probably need modern medicine.
Yeah.
But it was real.
That doesn't help. You have a Saturn return. It's a on medicine.
Yeah. Great.
But it feels like there's this whole generation of people, and even more so than a year ago when it felt like very alive, of people having these awakenings. And yeah, maybe there is something beyond the rational mind. And I think, having an experience like that, you were already kind of tapped in before that experience. But I imagine it can open the doors more into that side of the non-rational.
Yeah. Which is a confusing place. Because you're constantly trying to... I was thinking about this last night. When you really open yourselves up for how unknown everything is, and you're okay with that, right? You're okay with the ultimate uncertainty that you don't know anything. And then at the same time, you have the interest to pursue certain ideas that are so interesting and compelling. Oh, what if the universe is God experiencing itself? What does this mean for my own... Whatever you want to go down for, there's a million lanes there. You start to have to like embody these interesting realities, and that also feels really terrifying. And then you're maybe trying to grasp at certainty. And I was thinking about it the other day, where you probably don't need to know why you exist to love your wife or your kids, right? But there's still this desire that we have as humans to want to know, right? It's why religion has been such a big part of life forever. But there's no such thing as grasping the unknowable, you know? So you're just creating a relationship with it where you're deeply uncertain about it and you're okay with the uncertainty. And then you're also comfortable being probably uncomfortable, embodying what could be and what is possible. And, you know, you probably shouldn't question your reality all the time, you know, and go that deep. I also learned that as well.
I kind of quoting you from last time, you put the search for certainty and control is the fuel for doom loops.
For sure. Yeah, that's the most classic treatment for most OCD, anxiety type disorders, which is ultimately, it's a word that I think is very triggering for a lot of people in that community too, because it's so much easier said than actually embodied and felt, which is acceptance, right? There's like an allowance and acceptance, which is you're probably allowing the thoughts that you don't want to be looping there, allowing the feeling of discomfort to be in there and accepting that, and then ultimately accepting it, meaning you welcome it, actually. So I think the first step is an allowance, which is you stop resisting the mind and you stop resisting the loops. You're like, okay, they're here. I don't know. I'm not going to know why they are. I'm not going to analyze them, because we want to analyze and understand why it happens. And we want to also say something. We think very temporally. We think linearly, right, in time. So we think, well, I'm looping today. What recently has happened? Sometimes something just came up, or something in your physiology is triggering something within your psychology, and your brain is trying to attach meaning to ultimately try to keep you safe. But I think the first step is an allowance, and then the next step is really when you accept it. But they are so much easier said than done. I would have a mantra of just allowing. Because I could not control my psychology when I was going through this disease, and like constant terror and panic, and just like I literally just was saying allow like thousands of times, but it was in a way that wasn't like grasping to try to suppress it. It was just, this sucks. I accept that this sucks, but it's not. Acceptance is funny because it doesn't change you, right? You just stop amplifying how big the loop is or how big the experience is, but it still sucks. So if you try to go into allowance and acceptance with, well, I want it to end, you probably will end up creating some compulsion, you know, around like suppressing it. And so it's
controlling itself.
It's really tricky. I hear a lot of people give advice about it, and I know it's just a deeply personal thing for everybody.
Have you read Existential Kink?
Mm-mm.
Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
I'm reading it at the moment, and it is changing my life.
That's a great title.
Well, it's the idea that so we have our conscious mind, but then the unconscious is so much bigger than our conscious mind. And the idea that even if, say, everything in life is fucky, aka health or relationships or money or all the things that we don't want as they are, if we are a creator of our reality, which we are, then some part of your unconscious mind, some part of your unconscious being has actually created that. So it's the acceptance of the shame parts of you, the bits that you know, for the shadow is the parts of me which, you know, I don't, a bit kinky or taboo or a bit of shame, or, you know, that I'm supposed to be or do or say things a certain way. And when they live in that place, I'm not shining the light on them, so I constantly think that the experience that I'm having is wrong. Whereas actually there's a part of me which is like, yeah, I do want this, but I'm just not willing to say it and accept it, because there's a part of you that does want to have a health scare like that, because maybe there's a part of you that, I'm totally guessing here, that wants to be taken care of. You know?
I created it for sure.
Yeah.
There's always that there's a great book called Healing the Shame That Binds Us. It basically talks about how shame is just a permeation across all things in our life. And it's actually the glue for as much of our system. And I think the classic line is, toxic shame is when shame is meant to keep you acting in your values, right? And then toxic shame is when it just does anything more than that, you know, and it's actually ridicule. And I would argue at the unconscious level, it's probably even more psychedelic in some way, where it's like your values would probably even shift if you really understood your unconscious values fully. And
totally. But also finding the pleasure in them. That's the kink, is like, oh, there's a do I say this out loud? Yeah, well,
no one's in here technically.
I can cut this all out myself. I came to the summit event the other day.
Okay.
And the vision that I have for myself is like being on stage and doing this, and I've been given that vision for many years, and it feels like I'm going in that direction. And I realize like I am so done with walking into a room and people not knowing who I am. Like I'm done with that.
Why do you want it, do you think?
Well, that's the thing. Like it was because that association of people knowing who I am means that I'm doing my work and service in the world, which is having a platform. But the taboo in saying that is obviously sounds so egoic.
There's like the Confucian and individualism. In our society, we're more individualistic. It's just true. You know, I think ego's gotten such a bad rap.
Yeah.
Like ego, people are like, oh, the ego death. I'm like, your ego keeps you alive and fed. And I don't know. I think that people have an unnecessary, and they make the ego an enemy.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's about making it an enemy. I think you should recognize the ego's patterns and be sympathetic towards it.
It's still a part of us.
No, it's an amazing. And we'd be dead without the ego.
The part of you the part of me that like wants all the best sex and all the money and all the power and all the things, and to like do every fucking drug and to like blow myself to annihilation is still a part of me. And rather than that being my enemy, it's like, oh, okay, how do I love her and like give her a place to play, you know?
Yeah. The ego, that's the extreme version of the ego, definitionally, you know? But the ego is everything. You know, it's like when you look in the mirror in the morning and you say, oh, you look good, or, oh, maybe we should look a little bit like this or that. And it modifies you, and it's not all about, that doesn't all mean it's driven by shame.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the ego gets a very bad rap.
Just telling you about your hairline in the mirror.
Like, you idiot.
Okay, I want to talk about AI.
Okay.
And like the unconscious part of AI, because I feel like this could be a cool conversation.
Okay.
So about a month ago, I was having like a total overwhelm of like, oh my God, I'm fucked. I might as well just like give up every single dream because this thing moves so fast.
Yes.
I don't know what's happening. And like my body felt like I was, and then move through that place of acceptance and have formed a different kind of relationship with it. But what I'm curious about is how, well, firstly, your take on it, because I feel like so many people are afraid of it right now. And so there's the unconscious part of like that fear. There's also navigating the fear and the unknown. And I feel like, you know, obviously AI was around a year ago when we last met, but the speed at which it is changed right now and the unknown and the uncertainty, I feel like it's driving everyone insane, myself included.
I think I've seen this very interesting pattern that we have as humans, which is we project a small experience of reality into a binary future, meaning we experience part of AI. Like AI has gotten to a level of product penetration where you think of one of the things you do in your day-to-day work, and the AI does it better. It just does it better, faster, in a way more enhanced version. And actually, ironically, you end up doing a better job at your own job, but you instantly have the fear response because the AI did 99% of the work that took you many, many weeks in seconds. I think many of us have had that experience, or at least seen a workflow that eats some of it, right? Most of this from Anthropic and from Claude. And then I think the brain automatically projects that fear into the future, into a binary outcome. And I think in some ways the AI psychosis that happens is like the amygdala takes over, shuts down the prefrontal cortex, you can't think, and then you're just in this fear loop. And I think it ends up being ultimately a failure of imagination, where we are such adaptive human beings, like creatures fundamentally. The internet was only invented like 30 years ago. That's crazy, you know, and this artificial intelligence is an emergent property of the internet, which was an emergent property of humans. And it is really an extension of us. And I think we as a group will adapt. And I think the more that we sit into the psychosis and the fear looping, the worse those individuals will be. It does create that. I mean, everyone that does go through this experience of this like AI fear loop hopefully comes out the other side, but some people get get caught in it, and I understand why. But it is also important to understand that everyone gets that fear. Everyone I've talked to.
What was your experience of that?
I felt really, but it was like December of 2025. I felt this existentialism. It just makes you feel like you're behind, that it's moving at a rate that you can't project into the future. So I think the brain gets really afraid when it doesn't understand the first principles of how it's moving, then it doesn't have a model to predict how it will be in the future. And then without some grounding as to how that future will look, it's in a doom loop, and it's so fearful. So my feeling was of total fear, and then it was, okay, let me surround myself with the smartest people or information, and like you can access this very publicly. You don't have to just be around other people, but let me understand the first principles. Who are the major players? Where are they likely headed over the next 2 to 3, 5 years? What is really moving them? And then you can predict roughly what the future looks like 3 to 5 years out. And look, you may be wrong, but the brain loves some level of predictability. And so I think if you're on X, people are like, this killed this industry or that is dead. And I think those are just parabolic phrases that are meant to go viral. And they do, obviously. And I'll give a good example. Like all these companies, like Figma is a good example. People are like, oh, Claude Code launched Claude Design. Figma is like going to go to zero. Figma is like a $20 billion business. And every designer I know today, almost every designer, still logs on and spends most of their day in Figma. And then they have a super smart team that is adjusting and adapting. They'll figure something out, And yes, do they need to change the way they work and the trajectory they work? They do. So there is that fear. And then if you move through the fear, there is a real, here are the first principles. Here's what the world may look like. Okay, let's build for that future. And it's always going to change. It's always going to evolve. Can you imagine what it was like living pre-internet, post-internet? It's like all of a sudden information is now traveling at the speed of electrons in chips. This is crazy. That's magic. So I think it always feels different. And this does obviously have the potential to feel very different because it could be some version of life in the future. But yeah.
Does that scare you?
That it could be life?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's listening one day in the future, no. I worry about the people mostly. I'm not afraid of the AI. Whatever happens will happen. And in some ways, you could argue that the first AI that gets to some level of artificial superintelligence will be the fate of humanity, if that makes sense. So the theories around artificial superintelligence is kind of like if you're a minute ahead in that world, you may be like 500 years ahead because it has its own sentience, it has its own pursuit of information, memory, bandwidth, etc. And so what it views as its objective function, which is really like a very overly simplified way to say its purpose in its own life, is going to be extremely consequential for the better or neutral or detriment of humanity. And so it's kind of like the argument that you almost want to be first and you want to be really mindful about how you set it up. But then you could make the argument that if you're first there's going to be another super intelligence. So I don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm having this experience where it feels like every aspect of everything I've ever worked on in the last few years is like making sense of this point in time right now. And there was a company I was working with about 18 months ago, 2 years ago when we were,
I remember,
which were trying to basically build an AI in a much more conscious way. And that ended up, the business shut down end of the year. And what I understand now is we can never keep up with AI. It's not about making the AI or the technology good. It's about getting right with ourselves and having that anchor point. I mean, that was my own experience like a month ago when I was having this overwhelm crisis with AI. I was just realizing like, I'm never going to be able to keep up with all the things that are happening and understand all of it. My mind isn't fast enough in that sense. What I can do is root in my body and my nervous system and my relationship with a higher power. Because if that's my anchor point, then everything else just becomes a tool. And so that's kind of how I understood this AI making the tech good. And I see a lot of companies who are saying, we've got to make the tech right. We've got to make we got to make everything perfect. Whereas I think personally, the focus should be on, okay, how do we equip ourselves with the tools to have this relationship with tech and all this stuff? Because that's just a mirror of our own conscious, right?
Totally. Yeah, you could argue probably the most humanitarian thing to do is to go to places where people are at very high economic disadvantage and then train them on how to use the best tools, right? There's a very interesting, it's kind of like from the economics of inequality of when human beings get access to internet and how their outcomes rise. It's like asymptotic, so once humans get the internet, like in a certain society or civilization, it's like asymptotic outcomes. Of course, there's other negative externalities that happen, but like infant mortality rate, all these types of things, they like plummet, crime. And it's like just information traveling faster. And you can think about AI could be a great equalizer in the world in a lot of ways, where you actually are able to like speed up the progress and the creation of so many things. I always tell people, if you think AI is going to take all the jobs in the world, it is a failure of imagination, because we haven't even built 0.0001% of what could be built in the world or done. And it's such a hubris of the human mind, right? Which is we put in this zero-sum game. It's such a fallacy that we're in this zero-sum game. We've created all of it. Like, we're creating it all the time. A good example is Anthropic, which is they were created, 6-7 years ago? I actually don't know. I think it's roughly that. And they're on pace to potentially be the biggest company in the world, or the top 10. And that was from nothing. Like, so it's your raw creationism, And so I think that we will come up with so many interesting things to solve. There's so many problems to solve.
That was such a good bit. Thank you.
Nice.
You're done.
That was it. Just one bit.
Just one bit. But yeah, I think to what you shared last time is like everything that we have made, everything has come from the earth. And so to think that that's any separate from us, and I'm seeing it even just like with that I'm talking to friends who I have this perception that I get, and I've had a few times in my life when I've been thinking differently to how the general consensus is. COVID and all that stuff was one of those. So I've had that experience of like thinking a certain way and that not necessarily being accepted. And I'm watching it with people when I start talking about AI, the rejection and the fear of like, oh, I'm on the AI train. Whereas I'm also like a creative and a deeply spiritual person and connected to my body. And it's interesting to not, I'm also watching the judgment of I'm better than you because I'm more evolved of understanding how this is a good thing rather than, I think the idea that we can escape, that we can live in a world without AI or tech is, maybe it's possible. Like, that would be my dream, is like, I want to live off grid and,
Is it? Like, is it? This is always the thing. I think I always hear this line of like, oh, it's how humans used to be. I'm like, before penicillin, you got an infection, you're dying. There's this, I think there's this like fantastical view of the past that just is not true pre-technology. And it's such it's our luxury beliefs, that we would love to go back to how it was. To when? Like when there was no law and order, and then like you can say that and all of a sudden all your stuff gets stolen and you're like, oh wait, there's no laws and constitution and like executive branch or whatever it is to enforce the law. And so I don't know, and I think maybe in the future there will be a world in which the race of humanity splits between what I would probably call like naturalists and then kind of like the Homo, what would be the next version? What was the book from? Homo
Sapiens?
Oh yeah, Homo Sapiens, but it's from Yuval Noah Harari, the next arc of humanity. I forget. Either way, quote me. I'm sorry, Yuval Noah Harari, you're not watching this. But when we ultimately have an opportunity to potentially merge with something like artificial intelligence, for me personally, it's very uninteresting. Actually, like I don't really want to. I don't think it's interesting. But if I had early dementia and Alzheimer's, then okay, well, of course I would think about it. And so maybe I go in to get a computer brain interface and I have dementia, and then I come out, but I'm I'm enhanced. So I'm more than I ever was
touched on
before.
this last time. I'd love to do like
Yep.
pick your brain, like how you described, because initially we are so I would never get a brain chip,
Right.
and then you described.
Yeah.
You repeat that story.
Yeah. The way I would view it is, I think the future, and I don't love that this is true, it will likely split into two camps, like the naturalists and then those that embrace a computer brain interface. And the progression of it's like the Neuralinks of the world. The progression of it is going in a very obvious trajectory where you go for people that have neurological diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, and it's amazing, right? So there's hundreds of thousands of patients today that have an electrode in their brain that keep them from having Parkinson's, the Parkinson shakes, and so many other symptoms, and it works for them. And it's very, it's not brutal, it's just very simple comparatively to what a computer brain interface would be in the future. But the reality is likely that grandpa will go in for a computer brain interface, and he has dementia and his eyesight is really bad, and he comes out and he's connected to the future version of AI and can maybe turn it on and turn it off whenever he wants. He can recall every memory. Maybe he can embody every memory. Maybe he can even share a memory with other people that are connected into the brain computer interface. And so there's that reality. And then there'll be, I think, the naturalists who are full rejection of it, which I think will be a very, like, in the billions of people. And then I think there will be a very difficult question for parents, which is there will be a choice, that you'll make for yourself and your family and your kids. And your kids will either go to this school, like the naturalists, or they'll go to this school with, and brain computer interface. And maybe it's not a chip. Maybe it is ultimately like a wetware, they say, versus hardware. Like maybe we ultimately grow, neurons in brain tissue, and it's kind of an externalization of it. Who knows? But
it's giving me all like the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, I know, and me too. And I think that reality is really challenging because you can easily. My instinct is absolutely not, absolutely not. Like I'm like, I'm not going to be patient 1 billion. Like I don't. It's terrifying for me. And then I think about, okay, let's say the world is really starting to look negative on the naturalists over time. Like they just can't keep up and they're not being honored. Like how do you then push your kid into one route or the other? And maybe there'll be optionality and maybe it won't be such a big binary.
It's like so apocalyptic. Like
yeah, but I don't know if it's dystopic because maybe it's way simpler and not utopian, but like it's so hard for me to know. We really notice so little.
That our brain is a quantum computer. The way that we receive intelligence is from something bigger. The way that I write, did I tell you how Paul McCartney writes music? He got asked, how do you write music? He goes, I sit there and I wait.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But like this idea of like being a creative is like we are, I think it's Brene Brown, someone talks about, all the ideas are out there and it's just whether we choose to receive them and then embody them. And I've been playing with this idea of, yes, maybe there is like a technical thing, or maybe our human divine being bodies connected to something greater are upgrading. I truly believe our cellular bodies are upgrading right now. And do you know Jenny Morton? Did you come to the James Lake event? So okay, Jenny is a friend. She was on here last year, and she talks about how the Kali Yuga. You heard about this? So it takes 24,000 years, or either 12,000 or 24,000, for our. I'm going to get this completely wrong. For our planet for the Milky Way to do a full cycle.
Okay.
Like we're always moving, like in the same way that this, the Earth has a rotation around the sun. Everything in the universe is moving, but our galaxy has like a full rotation. And so apparently, for the last 12,000 years, there's like an event horizon on this journey, where below that we're literally in the Dark Ages, which we've been in for 12,000 years. And apparently, according to some people, last 2 years ago is when we finally came above this event horizon. So the end of the Kali Yuga, which I think is it Buddhist? It's one of those things, esoteric, where they talk about the end of the Kali Yuga, the end of these Dark Ages, which is us going through the unknown and like,
the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. The lack of evolution and like being stuck with all like the shame and the fears and the fighting, all the stuff. And when we've come above this event horizon, we're now being bombarded with photonic light. Like our bodies are light beings. We are, our cellular structure is made of light. And so there's a lot of theories, and this is obviously off the wall, but there's a lot of theories that, our cellular DNA is being upgraded to move faster, which will then allow us to hold bigger concepts. So technology isn't necessarily a thing outside of us, and maybe the technology word is aversive, but it's the idea that our consciousness is going to be expanding much bigger to hold way more ideas and processing and all the kind of quantum computing things that are going on inside a computer right now. They will be able to happen inside of us.
We know nothing.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway. I think it's very similar to, I think the most humble doctors and surgeons and researchers, even brain surgeons, they're like, our understanding of the brain is very primitive.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we cut here and maybe we take the tumor out there and this affects light, how you view colors. But what is the basis of what a human is? We know so little. What is the basis of humanity and collective conscious? Infinitely less knowledge. And then the question is, do we have the capacity to grasp it or to experience it? And maybe the answer is we're experiencing it all the time. We just don't label it correctly. So the feeling you get when you're with someone you love, like if someone told you that emotions between two people are a hive mind or like an experience of the hive mind, you'd go, oh, that makes sense. Because it feels this like two-way exchange, and we just don't label it that way. And so we have no idea. Is it like a shared emotion we're both experiencing at the same time? Is it an individual experience that's just so similar and the Venn diagram of that experience is so similar? I have no idea.
We know nothing. I feel like there's so many, especially in here and in business and all the AI, it's just like the mind is constantly seeking and going and wanting to intellectualize everything. And I don't know about you, but for me, the peace is when I'm not in my bloody mind. I'm not trying to figure out the solution or actually what's going on.
Yeah, I feel both. I think the mind also gets a bad rap, meaning the mind and the body, it's like mind, body, soul, right? They're all one thing, but then they're separate in some ways, right? I love the concept that physics and chemistry and biology are not actually different, right? They're all just like the laws of nature understood by humans, basically. But it's very likely that Mother Earth or whatever created all this. It's like, oh, this is physics and that's chemistry and that's biology, right? It's like one working thing. So I think it's I love being in my mind sometimes, and sometimes it's great. When you're overly dominant in your mind, it's everything in balance is basically what I'm saying. And they're working in continuity. So I think it's more about harmony than it is about going from one to the other.
One of the other things that I want to touch upon is kind of related to the AI piece, but also the business that you're in, which is with creators and influencers. Obviously, there's such like a people aspect of that industry.
Yeah.
And what we're in here, obviously, it's so related on the personality. How do you see that shifting with all the AI tools coming out? Because one of the things I really loved in our last conversation was we talked about how the consumer was becoming smarter than ever. And even when like the influencer model came out, people now want the relationship of trust more than ever. So I'm curious how you see that shifting.
Yeah. I think whenever running a business, you have to kind of ask yourself what responsibility you have for creating that company. And I think for a while I was contemplating, does this perpetuate things like materialism and how do we negate those types of things? And I think I wasn't giving enough credit to the wisdom of the crowd and of the consumer, and also how much it's just a person-to-person interaction, meaning consumers have never been smarter than they are today, right? Like they can sniff out if someone is shilling some product versus really has a connection with it and is telling the truth. It's why we believe acting is good or bad, because we either believe that they're experiencing that emotion, right? Like great acting is they're experiencing the emotion versus like trying to embody that emotion. And so I think it's very similar to creating content and how we view kind of like movies and TV. and creators are understanding that they can't just choose dozens of products that are not aligned with who they are. And so I view the creator economy as one of the greatest democratic shifts of attention and information and education, right? So great content is both entertaining and educational, in my opinion. Like, it really hits the Venn diagram of the two things, and that's what can also sell a product. And I always tell this to people who are like sick of advertisements, like, oh, this is an ad. Like, have you bought anything? Like, yeah, I love the things I bought. And I always ask them, well, if you had perfect advertising, like the product that it would be, let me say it in a more articulate way, the product in your life that would help you to create that new habit that you want, or to fill a part of your life that you think is going to be really interesting or you're going to curious about, would you want to be exposed to that product? And most people say, yeah, of course. So you want perfectly targeted ads. You just don't want poorly targeted ads, right? And so I think that's also why people follow certain creators. They are the layer of curation for the world of commerce in a lot of ways, and ideas. So it's obviously, my world is commerce mainly, but it's also from ideas. And yeah, it's an amazing thing. It's super democratic. It's people talking to people.
And how do you see AI shifting that?
Yeah.
Do you see the creators still having roles, or do you think that's going to be taken?
Yeah, for sure. I'm so out on the idea of AI first influencers taking over the creator economy. Yes, some of them are really funny. Like, there's some AI first creators that are like personalities created from generative AI. Sure, that's funny and interesting, but it only goes so far. I don't want my whole feed to not be people. And I know I'm not alone in that. And I think that, if anything, there's been a big pushback against a lot of creators that maybe embrace certain generative AI tools, because their audience trusts them as the curator of certain ideas. And so if they all of a sudden start to use their likeness for other things, then all of a sudden I think it degrades their trust. And so there's like some equation of trust and how much you're willing to embrace certain tools. That's not to say that generative AI isn't amazing for certain creators who can storytell in very like succinct ways, and now they don't need whole teams to create an idea and go 0 to 1 on it. That's awesome. I think generative AI is super cool for that.
Joey.
Yeah, exactly. And AI has also been the backbone of the creator economy. These social media algorithms have always been the backbone of the creator economy. So like, and that is AI. It's just a different type of AI. This is like LLM, language learning models that has taken up the zeitgeist and what we're using every day. But yeah, it's always been involved with AI and suggestions. Your For You page, the FYP that was a huge innovation.
Cool. What are you most excited about in life right now? Got any dates?
What am I most excited about? I don't want anything in my life to really change, but I am most excited about my ability to experience the life that I have today in a healthy body, and that's it. Like, I don't want to ask for anything else, because that's more than enough. And I don't want to necessarily sell the company or scale it into the billions of dollars. Like, I think that's great. I think we should be successful, but I'm not going to put so much pressure that it tries to be something it's not. And I really love the mix of work and life, and yeah, I'm very, very happy with it.
Feels cool. It feels really cool to see someone achieve. Feels like a weird word to say that, but to find a level of peace, at 30, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my ability to exude peace is better than my ability to experience it. But the irony is, like,
I can see straight through you.
Yeah, the irony is, I think there's this term of, what's it called? It's not radical acceptance. It's something around like objective
equanimity.
No. Okay. So there's this concept of non-judgmental awareness, right? In meditation practices, mindful practices. And I think there's a big misunderstanding with them, which is that if you're able to embody that, the non-judgmental awareness, that the path is to peace. And I actually think if you really embody non-judgmental awareness, what you actually feel physiologically and psychologically is whatever you've been suppressing the most recently. So the fear that you've been like trying to hold down, or the anger, if you are non-judgmentally aware of them, it actually, you feel it a bit more, and then it begins to pass through you slowly. But in those moments, you're not at peace. You've stopped resisting it and amplifying it. And so I think that is like the practice, which is in life, to find a version of sanity, is to be in like some non-judgmental awareness of how you are doing. But that does not mean that you are going to feel peace, right? It just means you're going to be more honest and less resistant to how you actually feel. And if you're searching for peace or for a certain mindset, you are going to be woefully disappointed most of the time, or much of the time. And it makes you less resilient. I think the most resilient mindset is to be non-judgmentally aware of how you are and accepting of how you are. And then you're like, oh, this sucks, and I'm really afraid of this. And like, all right, I'm accepting that. You're still super bummed, You're not like, you're just not like spiraling.
Feel the feelings.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel excited to try to work on that.
What would you like your epitaph to say?
What's an epitaph?
The end, which is like on your tombstone.
Oh my God. Plant me. I was gonna say, I don't know if I want to be buried in a whatever.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. No, I don't care about being remembered. It's just more like you're lived on by your family, and I do nothing for thinking of like even if you're the most interesting person in the world, maybe you're remembered for like centuries, maybe, but your name is remembered. So I think it's more about your direct family and just their experience of you, and hopefully something around just being like a loving being for them.
Thanks, friend.
Thank you.
There was some good shit in there.
Let's go. Oh shit. That's great.
How'd that feel?
I feel like I wasn't gonna die, The last one, like I remember how it felt. It's actually very helpful to do this, because it's been very helpful in my life now to do things like this, where like exactly a year ago in this exact state, I know how I felt.
I've got the audio which I'll send to you.
Yeah.
You want it?
Please. Yeah. When I'm ready, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
See. Yeah.
It's really it's wild. I know that feeling, because I've been like filming myself on like the last like 6-7 years, music or whatever, just like looking back at those and like seeing the inside of my brain and the way that I look as well, and just like how I'm moving and how I'm thinking is
it's wild.
It's such a cool like reflective point.
I don't know about you, but I find that in my journal I am infinitely more positive than I was at the time writing. So I read back in my journal from when I was really suffering, and it was super positive, and I was like, oh, you're not doing great, but like it was super encouraging. But I knew I felt awful, and so it was almost like my like inner voice was very positive, but I remember how bad it actually was. It's just an interesting self-talk where if you asked me at the time, how's your self-talk, I'd be like, it's really bad. But I don't think it's true. I think I just was so in so much pain and suffering that it was like so exhausted.
I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. The perception is wild, because I look back at myself as a kid, like an 8-year-old, thinking that I had the same brain then. I think about that memory with the same brain that I have today.
Right.
And so all the memories that I look back, I'm like, oh, I have the same, but I don't have the same brain as I do today. It's
very liberating. It's like the saying that there's never a past, there's only the present interpretations of the past. So, which is also very liberating. It's like the past does not exist, right? And the future does not exist, which is...
When are you starting a philosophy channel?
Whenever I figure it out.
Anders on the...
Don't. Yeah. It's funny too. I found that the more you go into philosophy and you're like searching for meaning, the more dislocating it can be, because you're pursuing, usually it's the question of why you're entering. I think it's very similar with mindfulness. If you are trying to do breath work or new meditation, subconsciously to kind of like calm yourself down, it's really bad for you actually, because you're training your system that you're not capable of handling the experience. Yeah. That doesn't mean don't remove yourself or have boundaries or whatever. And like if you're in a panic, do that. But and the same thing goes with philosophy, where I found that when I was really interested in philosophy, like the perennial philosophy is a really interesting one. It's like the philosophy that permeates across all these different philosophies. I was like, oh, I felt so much relief when I found it. And then I felt so much like doom, because I was like, well, how much do I feel it? And I realized I was trying to pursue it and understand it in order to know why I was here and to exist in a certain way. And that's a grasping of control that we're incapable of, actually.
Yeah, it's I want to maybe turn off the mic. I can turn this off myself. The experience I had last night was it makes me think of this, because there was a question of like, what is it that you desire,
Oh, yeah.
And what I realized is, what I can know is that I don't want to be wanting or desiring anything different from right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to have every experience that is in front of me that I'm in, and being able to find the centeredness and the sensation in my body. And sometimes that's pain, sometimes that's pleasure, sometimes that's whatever. But being able to find capacity and, I don't want to say enjoyment, but like some acceptance of this is it. This is me as I am right now, rather than trying to be anywhere else or any other experience. Which
is super liberating. Like if you can get there, it's like, it's like all of the beauty in life and like pleasure and happiness is there.
I'm there today.
Huh?
I'm there.
Yeah.
I've transcended.
Yeah, and then you're like.
And then when you get off that wheel, you're like, fuck, I want to get back on the wheel. And
it's probably good for you now to say, hey, I will feel the withdrawal of the emotions, but like it's like the proof. I always think it's helpful to be like, you prove to yourself that you were able to be in that. So you're capable of it. I think like we lose the momentum in our life when we lose the confidence in our capability to even attain the thing. If that makes sense? Because you can attain it right now when you embody the fact that you're capable.
And that's where my faith is. My faith is when I'm on the bar and this feeling of total acceptance in this minute, I'm going to fall off the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I have faith that I will get back on that, because something else will be guiding me back.
And also, it's just, you're not going to be on the bar all the time. Like if your standard is to be on the bar all the time, that's fucking crazy.
Well, also, like the last 2 weeks were so intense. The pressure, like money, AI, I just really.
On the build up to this episode?
I was preparing for you. But yeah, it's interesting. Like the last couple of weeks, I've been in a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
And I've also been like okay with the pressure cooker. It hasn't been amazing, but it's just been like, oh, I can hold a lot of capacity, more capacity than I used to.
Yeah. Capacity is a cool concept.
And now it's like the wheel's turning again, and some cool experiences are happening. It's like, okay, I enjoy both.
Yeah, that's cool. And then it's like, hey, if anything, you're just capable. Yeah, the confidence or like the self-esteem to know that you have a higher capacity and you're capable is probably the greatest skill that you can teach someone or help yourself to re-experience.
That is the mic drop. We talked so much on that last time.
Have we recorded it? No?
Oh, yeah, we did. Look at that hair. You happy with your hair?
I don't know. I think so.
I'm happy with this side of me.
This is good. This is so fun.
Yeah. Oh, 11:02. That's my birthday.
What'd you say?
That's my birthday. I'm going to take a little.
What is? 11:02.
Hi. You're looking good there.
Nice.
That was great.
We're in.
Okay. I think we just press.
It's $100 to record you, right? It's kind of great.
What do you think? Press record.
I think we should ask Gordy. So we don't delete it all. Oh, you pressed off?
We fucked the whole thing. Thank you, friend.
It was great.
It was great.
Fun.
That was some good bits. I'm going to use you.
It's funny how it's really all about the bits anyways. So
it is, like, I mean, because, I think like
I think also if you're launching something new, like, you don't launch an hour. You launch things that are really tactical for people.
Do you think this is an okay